We are learning a sicha now from Likuti sichot alef on Parsha Pikude. That's the second half of this week's Torah reading. B'Torah b'chalal, in Torah in general. B'miuchad, and especially in Torah shebichtav. Good, okay? Good. Now we're learning by what? We're learning now, by the way, this is the time of the corona panic, and so we're everyone is consigned and is to their homes and confined is consigned by the government, confined by the government to their homes. So here we are. But Or Tamim will continue, and I'm learning by telephone. But Torah and the Torah in general, and especially in Torah shebichtav, and especially in the written Torah, kol mila v'kol ot meduyakot u'mechushavot. Every word and every letter are exact and calculated by Hashem, by God. Halachot rabot, there are a lot of laws, nilmadot, which are learned, mimilim sforim, for just a few words or even from just a few letters of the Torah. But zod, nevertheless, why did God do it that way? That's what He decided to do. God decided He wanted to give the Torah in such a way that we would have to learn it and to understand what He meant by the Torah. But zod, nevertheless, chozer v'nishna parshiot vayakel pekude hatior. Every single word is so important, and every single letter is so important. But here we see what seems to be a big waste of letters and words. In these two parshas, vayakel and pekude, it repeats again the description and all the details of the vessels of the tabernacle and the building of the tabernacle itself and all of the garments of the tabernacle. We already explained this whole thing in Parshat Truma Tetzaveh a couple of weeks ago. At first glance, Yochel Haya Likatev, the Torah could have just written in a very short way. B'nei Israel, write a sentence at the end. These two Torah portions that we read a couple of weeks ago, where it tells what the commandment is to make the tabernacle, it could just say, B'nei Israel asu et klei mishkan, that the Jewish people did everything that God said. And this would be tens and tens of paragraphs would be saved if everything is exact. So it must be some sort of it can't be God forgot or He just was repetitive. It must be that every word and every letter, even though it seems to us to be unnecessary because all these details already were mentioned, it must be there's some reason that God had to repeat it. Hatam lakach, the reason is shalachos rabos, that a lot of laws, einon mofios b'meforish b'Torah, do not appear clearly in the Torah. V'yesh lilmod me'otiot sforot, and we can learn them just from a few letters. Hu ki me'achar sin she'efshel adat et halacha mimele o mimele o ot miuteret, from one letter that's extra. Hari ilu hayon nichtavot b'forish hay yutar devorim. If the letters, if God could write it in an economical way, for instance, let's take an example: the commandment of tefillin. So it says you totafot beinenecha. Totafot beinenecha. Now, why doesn't it just say you should put on 2 boxes, and the boxes should be like this, and in each box there should be this? And is that, why didn't it say clearly? It says because it just says one word, totafot. From this word totafot, we learn that there have to be 4 boxes, and then it was given what you should put into the boxes, and etc. All these things are not written down. Why? Because if it would be written down, it would be extra. In addition to the fact that God wanted us to have the commandment of learning the Torah, but there would be extra letters, extra words, extra paragraphs. This is the reason why so many laws are in Mishnah and a Remez Bilvad. There are so many laws that are even in the Mishnah which is an explanation of the written Torah, they're found only in a hint. And in the Gemara, Hein Mofiot Baharchava, the Talmud explains them in long length. Shekein Darka Shal Mishnah Belashon Katsara Biyachas LeGemara. So the Torah, the 5 books of Moses, is very, very concentrated, very, very economical in its words and its letters. And the Torah then explains, the Mishnah that explains in a little bit bigger length and a bigger width and breadth what it says in short in the Torah. The Torah is sort of like the seed, and the Mishnah explains it. Well, the Mishnah also is very, very short and terse. So you have to have the Gemara, the Talmud, in order to explain that. If so, kasher alas p signon v'diuk lashon Mishnah efshar lilmod halachos al yedei remez. If so, in the Mishnah you can learn just one little hint. Hayata hofatan b'mafurish mehave yote devarim. If so, if you would explain in the Mishnah too much, then it would be unnecessary. It would be, the Mishnah would have extra words. We see that from just a little hint in the Mishnah, they learn all these laws in the Talmud. If so, the hint was sufficient. So it is in the Kesher of the Gemara in regarding to those people that came after the Gemara, Rashi, Tosfot, the Rishonim bi'achlas l'achronim, and also the Rishonim, the Tosfot, until even the Beit Yosef, etc., until the later explainers came and explained it. And there's the emphasis is to be as exact as possible with the words and the letters that there are. According to this, the whole thing doesn't make any sense. If every letter in the Gemara, every more in the Talmud, which is so voluminous, is very careful to be the bare minimum, and how much more so in the Mishnah, how much more so in the Torah? If so, why is it over here? It seems to be exactly the opposite. Here in these two portions, Vayakel Pikude, that there's seemingly extra it just repeats what was already said word for word sometimes. What was said just a couple of weeks ago in the Torah. Hatshuva, the answer is Kedugmas Atera, it's like the answer which is given to similar questions. Madua Chozrim and Nimnaim Korbanos Shnei Masar Anasim. We have in Parshas Nosoi, which is in the book of Numbers, the story about when the tabernacle was inaugurated in the desert. The tabernacle started working on the first day of Nisan, and then as soon as it was able to start sacrificing sacrifices, as the 12 tribes, each one, the heads of each one of the 12 tribes, they brought sacrifices. And they brought exactly the same thing. Each tribe brought exactly the same sacrifices. And instead of saying that each one brought the same one and just saying what it is and so this tribe also brought, and Reuven also brought, and Shimon also brought, no. It explains the exact same words for each and every tribe.
Right.
12 times it repeats exactly the same words over and over again. The same question we have here. Isn't that a big waste of words? It could have just written one time what they brought and say each one brought it, and so did Reuven, so did Shimon, so did. The answer is Shekol Nasi Paul Ima Korban Shalo Inyanim Achirin. That each one of the heads of the tribes, even though they brought exactly the same thing, but they each one had different results. It was a different person bringing them. Hamshachot Shonot, they brought down different blessings into the world. Kafisha Davarim Romazim B'Midrash, as it is hinted at in the Midrash and also in Kabbalah. Lefichach, therefore, lo nitan likotev b'Torah she'anasi hevi kefi shehevi anasi yakodem. Therefore, you cannot say that Reuven brought the same thing as Shimon, and Shimon brought the same thing as as Levi, and Levi brought the same thing as the others. Why? Shekain himshich kol echad me'em amshacha acheret, because each and every one brought, not Levi, each one did something totally different. Something similar to that is like the prayers we pray, and we say exactly the same words every single day for the weekdays, exactly the same, what's called the standing prayer, exactly the same prayer. But every day has its different thing that it does. And so it is every word, even though it seems to be doubled over, but it has a different effect than the words from before it. But derech zu, similarly, efshal teretz, we can answer also the question that we just finished asking about these two portions, vayakel pikude. Don't they repeat over what was said before in two previous Torah portions just a couple weeks ago? HaMishkan shekodesh baruch hu omer LaMoshe, this tabernacle that God told to Moshe, Kafisha Mator B'Parshas Truma and Tetzaveh, as it is explained in Truma and Tetzaveh, and the Mishkan that the Jewish people made, in fact, in Parshas Vayakel Pekude, right? What is the difference? Even though it repeats over the exact same things, but in the two previous Torah portions, it told what God commanded the Jews. And now it's talking about what the Jews actually did when they actually built it. Kafisha Masupar, like it's written over here, this hints at two different hamshachot, two different types of blessings and revelations of godliness brought into the world. As the rabbis say, Mishkan Lamata, Mishkan Lamayla. They said that there was a tabernacle below in this world, and there was a tabernacle in the upper worlds in heaven. Spiritual. Mishum kach, therefore, nimnim kol pratim pam nosefet. Therefore, it's talking the second time because it's talking about a different tabernacle. When Moses gave it was talking about the spiritual one. And now when the Jews are making it, it's talking about the physical one. And which one do you think is higher? We'll see. Upapiru, the Kliya Mishkan, all the vessels of the Mishkan and all the garments of the Kohanim, Kafish and Ne'amru, like it says in the beginning in Truma Tetzaveh, they come from God. And it was said to Moshe, Yitron Devarim Miyuta Miyuchad Be'inyan Zeh Hu B'Shlosh. In Parshat Pikude, when God gave the commandment to Moses, there we have only two characters playing over there, Moshe and God. God's will given over to Moshe. There we see something pure, incomprehensible pure. First of all, number one, Shomea umekabel adibur Moshe, the one who heard these commandments from God, he was what's called a soul from Atzilut. His soul was able to perceive the most, inclusive level of perception possible. He saw the entire world from its most spiritual aspect. He saw the whole thing. We're living in this little world. We don't see what's going on at all. We just don't see what's happening. Like somebody standing in the ground and trying to tell the weather. What's the weather going to be in a couple of weeks? We don't know. But they have weather balloons that go up, and now they have satellites even. The satellites up there, they can see whole half of the world. They know where the clouds are moving. They know how they're moving. They know when they're moving. They can tell the temperature. So from above, you can tell what's going on. You can see everything. Also, these satellites they have there, they have these zoom cameras. You can see. That was the level of Moses. Moses was seeing the whole world from above. That's called Atzilut, but not above physically. He saw it from a different dimension, an all-inclusive dimension. Kolomer, Gam biyoto kan. Even when Moses was here, Hayamamish ke be'olam Atzilut, he was like in the highest spiritual world. Like they say, the Shekhinah, God's presence, God's will spoke from the mouth of Moshe. When Moses said something, it was God speaking. That's why the whole book of Deuteronomy was spoken by Moses. Moses said the whole thing. And everyone knew it was God speaking through his mouth. Limrod, even though Shekol and Neshamot, that all the Jewish people, every Jewish soul comes from this world of Atzilut, just like Moses. But what? Their source of every Jew is there. And that's where the source is. Every Jew is certain that God exists, everything, but where? It's hidden down deep inside of him. We learned that in the Mimer in the morning. La'umatam neshamot, but these souls, these great souls like Moses, Gam, even when they're here in the physical world, they see the whole thing, the whole picture. L'marot sheyesh havdel, even though there's a big difference between what's called the souls of Atzilus and the vessels of Atzilus, like we learn in Negeris HaKodesh, that the souls are already separate from what's called the vessels of Atzilus. A little bit Kabbalistic ideas over here. Hadavorim muzbarim al neshamos da Atzilut hari im zot heim adayim b'dargo Atzilus. Even though these souls, what's called of the world of Atzilut, come from the lower part of Atzilut, but nevertheless it's Atzilut, right? It's called Atzilut. Atzilut means pure godliness. These are people that they feel God, they are sure of God, just like we feel ourselves and we're sure of ourselves. There's another advantage. Ha'ofen shel kibul adibur v'nevuah is like this. Lo kam navi od b'Yisrael kam Moshe. Moses was the greatest prophet that ever existed. Two ways. Why? Number one, when all the other prophets, when they received prophecy, they would fall down. They would go into like whatever is some sort of a catalytic state. Moshe could stand totally aware at the time when he received his prophecy. Not like the other prophecies. Not like the other prophets. The other prophets, they fell down. Some would even take off their clothes. And the nevuah of Moses, why did they take off their clothes? Because the clothes represented their own thoughts and their own egotism. That's why Adam put on clothes. They would take it off. But Moses didn't have to do that. Moses didn't have his own mind and didn't have his own thoughts. He was totally connected to the truth. Nevuas Moshe hayata bebechinas zeh. The prophecy of Moses was that he saw God. He said this, not like the others. The others, he would say this exactly is what God is saying, and all the other prophets would say Ko Omar Hashem. God is saying something like this. All of the other prophets, they had some, disturbance in the messages that God gave them from their body and from their own ego. Even in the highest prophets, they would still say Ko, Isaiah. But Moshe, his whole body was a vessel for godliness. So that's what happened in Parshas Vayakel Pikude, that God was speaking directly to the highest human being that ever could possibly exist in the world, Moses. Number 3, Makom HaKabbalah Haya Bahar Sinai. Where did Moses get all these commandments in Parshas Vayakel Pikudim? In Parshas, Truma and Tetzaveh, a couple of weeks ago, where did he get it? On Mount Sinai. Sha'az Omad Moshe B'darga Nile is that Moses was even at the highest of the high. That was his highest period in his whole life. He didn't eat any bread. Lechem lo chal, mayim lo shata. Imki gam la'achar shi'yard Moshe. Even after Moses came down from the from the mountain, his eating and drinking was different from everybody else. But when he was on Mount Sinai, moving the Mishkan, kazeh lo naseh mizav kesef gashmi. Therefore, the tabernacle that God talked to Moses about when he was on Mount Sinai, that's what we read about a couple of weeks ago. This was talking about something very, very pure, very, very spiritual. It had nothing to do with gold and silver. Gold and silver in some sort of spiritual sense, but not. That was what in Parshas Truma and Tetzaveh. Now in our Torah portion, we repeat everything over, but it's a whole different world. Kliya Mishkan, but the the vessels of the Mikdash, of the Kliya Mikdash and Levushi Kuhuna, as they are in Vayakal Pekude, the Mishkan, the tabernacle, is also called Mikdash. Asali Mikdash, V'shulchanti B'tocham, it refers also to the tabernacle. In our portion that we're reading now, is talking about how it really comes down into the physical world, where Moshe is speaking to the Jewish people. It's not God speaking to Moshe. We're talking about Jewish people. Most of the neshamas of the Jews are nowhere near to the level of Moses. Most of them, in fact, are what's called the world of Asiya. And it was talking about making it in this physical world. And it's talking about making it from gold and silver and brass, physical. So if so, we see it's talking about two different types of Mishkan. One of them was talking about spiritual, and the other was physical, as we will continue in the next class.